Welcome to another episode of Appalachian Shine. This is J.C. Swinegruber. It's the official podcast for the Foundation for Appalachian Advancement. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Certainly appreciate it, and our audience is growing, and that's a good thing. So if you're first time listening to Appalachian Shine, share it with some friends. We're on Spotify, and we are on iTunes as well. And you can find us on Facebook, Support Appalachia, Facebook.com/Support Appalachia. I've got pretty lucky here today. We've had an Authors Guild meeting with the Appalachian Authors Guild, and I'm very pleased just to be hanging around a table here with some fellow writers and having a good time today. So I'm just going to go around the table here. We have Ellen Myatt. We have Jason Houghton, who's one of the newer members. And we have Vicki from Hoop Books Publishing. We've had you on before, Victoria Fletcher.
Yes.
And we're all here in Abingdon, Virginia today. And we just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that local writers are working on. And I want to start off with Ellen, because Ellen, you and I were talking that you're working on a cookbook that's coming out.
Right.
And this is really centered and tailored toward people with autoimmune deficiencies.
That's right.
And to keep down swelling and inflammation.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about why you got into writing this book and who it's going to help.
Well, the reason I got involved in the book is because I have a vasculitis, an autoimmune condition known as Wegener's, and initially was given 6 to 24 months to live. Okay. The key is my body was so full of inflammation that it made it difficult for blood to adequately pass through my body. And it's a systemic disease. That was overwhelming. But what really became overwhelming was figuring out what I could eat.
And then at that point, you just started doing a lot of research, Googling.
I started researching probably about 6 months after my condition came under control. And then this time 2 years ago, I took a setback, and then I really got serious thinking about what do I need to do, because I have to manage my own health. There is great information online. You can find all kinds of information on anti-inflammatory foods, even shopping lists. But the problem was, when I got the groceries, what do I do with them? Okay? And I'm not a girl who likes to use 15 things in a recipe. Okay? So I had to find something that was good for one person. I also live alone, so I don't want to cook for 6. I want to cook for 1. So it's taken me a year to play with recipes, tailor them. And what this book really is not just a cookbook. I want it to be a transition guide. I'm a food addict. Okay? Give me any food that's white. Rice, potatoes, bread, okay? I mean, I love it. I'm not as bent for sweets, okay? But I want all that carb that I can possibly
So that's
get.
why you give me the candy when we come
That's
to this
right. I
meeting.
passed it to you. That's
All
right.
right.
I'm saving myself for potatoes later tonight.
And everybody says they want to see. Everybody says they want to see more of me, so I'm going to bulk up for next year.
But the thing is that I think for a lot of us who find out that we have an autoimmune disease and we need to change our ways, let's face it. Some people who are smokers can quit on a dime, okay? Some people who may drink too much can stop that pretty quickly. And maybe some people who eat a lot of food or the wrong foods can change their ways overnight. I'm not that girl, okay?
No, it's not easy. And I'm no stranger to diets. I mean, I'm totally convinced I could jump in the air and get stuck at this point. So, I mean, one of the things that you were talking about with your book that I found was incredibly useful is at times when I've went on diets, like I mentioned, fast metabolism diet that I tried, and it was incredibly successful. But you go out and you buy food, it's like you spend a lot on food, but you end up wasting a certain amount of food.
A lot of food.
Yeah.
Especially fresh food, right?
Yeah, and tell folks how what you're doing actually will help them maximize using the food and minimize wasting their money.
Well, so this is more of a transition guide, how to get from being a food junkie, so to speak, okay, to eating foods that will help to keep the inflammation down in my body, okay? And it is a journey. It just doesn't happen overnight. The thing is that I found myself buying all the great groceries, but like you said, some of them were just wasting away in the bottom bin, okay? So I learned to buy less. It does mean maybe going to the store a little more often, okay? But buy less and use what I have. But again, when I noticed other meal guides or whatever for this type of disorder, today we're having half of an avocado, and we don't see that coming up in the week until about 4 days from now. That thing's turned black in my fridge.
Right.
So my meal guide, I think that's the important part of this book. The meal guide helps you to see how to revisit some of that. Now, I'm not big on leftovers. I really don't care for leftovers. So I have gotten creative in how I repurpose spinach.
Yeah.
How do I repurpose, some of those other veggies?
Yeah. So, it's really fascinating. I can see how that's going to be helpful because just the nature of where we live at, we all live on comfort foods all the time.
Right.
Yeah, and
especially this time of year.
And I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love every bit of it way too much. But when do you think this book will be out?
I'm hoping that I'm through. I'm on my second round of testing recipes. So I created the recipes, I photographed them, and that's that. But now I've got to redo these recipes, ensuring that what I've written works. Now, the one thing to remember, too, when you're looking at some of these recipes or trying them, in most of them, there is no salt used. In some of them, there's a little bit of sea salt because I have to keep that salt down again because of inflammation. Okay. I'm also diabetic, so I have to keep the sugar level down. Besides, sugar can be an inflammatory as well. Yes. And you'd be surprised at what vegetables and things are inflammatories as well.
Okay, vegetables.
Yeah, but you'll have to see the book to know the rest of that.
That's a teaser if I've ever heard. So are you self-publishing this? or
Right now, self-publishing.
Okay,
right.
Okay. And so through
Vicky
at Who Books Publishing,
right?
And Jason's over here nodding like yes, the sea salt and so forth. Now, Jason, you're a new guy here in the Guild.
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been living here in Appalachia? You moved out of Cleveland.
No, I moved out of North Carolina.
Okay.
Originally, I'm from Ohio. I was in the Army for 9 years, and I got to see a lot of the world and live in a few places. I left the military in North Carolina, raised my son there. And now I've settled in Southwest Virginia, and I couldn't be happier. I love the Appalachia.
And
so wonderful.
You've got your first book out called 18 Fools.
Yes, sir.
And that's on Amazon. And you're working on your second one now. Now, you told me that you were putting the book the fiction that you've been working on into a, is this some sort of a competition with other writers from the military?
There is a veteran competition. I am not sure that I will be entering it now. I pulled Strange Brew from what the final entry. I pulled it back. There's parts that I want to rewrite, and I want to do it right, and I'm probably going to self-publish it this summer.
Okay.
But I want to make sure it's 100% the best work I could do.
Yeah, the way you want. And you let me actually beta read your book for you.
Yes, sir.
And that was a really good story, and I like how you kind of incorporate some of the things you've seen in the military into this book, because the story itself was just the experience in another country or things that I had no idea had happened. You just don't hear about it in the news. And it's kind of, from your experience just writing into this fiction.
Yes, a lot of the book takes place in Kosovo, and I was one of the first. My unit was one of the first ones there. We stayed for 6 months. I got to know the culture. Found out that my relatives, my ancestors, are actually from the Balkans, so it was good to see the culture that they came from, even though it was under different circumstances that we were observing it.
Yeah.
And the coffee and the chess from over there, that made a strong impact in the story. As one of my beta readers, you can.
Now, for your book that's online, 18 Fools, I'm actually reading it right now, so I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through this. And your last name is spelled Houghton, if anybody wants to look that up on YouTube, or not on YouTube, but on Amazon. And it's called 18 Fools. Really great cover. Your wife actually does cover designs, and she did a logo for me as well. And you can find her at IHaveYouCovered.net. And that's so you can check out her work there too. So you just got a built-in book cover every time you do something. So the rest of us are kind of jealous because, like, well, we have to hunt and peck around, and and then Vicki, unless you go to Vicki, and you're here in Abingdon with Hoop Books Publishing, and you're also the president of the Authors Guild.
Yes.
And how long have you had Hoop Books?
Hoop Books here at the incubator began in September 2018. I was actually doing books for people from about 2014. I started getting so many clients that I ended up deciding to start my business full time. So I retired from my job at the church and came down here to the incubator and started. I just completed project 120, and I have 12 people in queue
Okay. Wow.
for books.
That's impressive. That tells you the strength of just the artistic expression here in Central Appalachia, that many people, that you have that many people coming to publish books,
Right.
not just people through the guild, but outside of the guild and,
Right.
and in other writing groups and clubs, because there are quite a few around the area.
Yes.
Even though I would say we're the premier group here with the Appalachian Authors Guild.
Right.
But it's amazing that we have such great talent here. And it is a challenge, though. I wanted to ask you about this, and then the other members here, too, because a lot of people are self-published or go through companies like yours, and it's really hard to promote and market and advertise.
Yes.
What are some of the biggest challenges that Appalachian writers have right now? I mean, we're in the middle of COVID, the pandemic, and people are starting to get out a little bit more now, but it's tough because people haven't had book signings in a year.
Right. And that's one of the most important things you can do for marketing when you're a self-published author, is to do in-person book events, because that's how you get your name out there. Mm-hmm. People buy your books, they like your books, they come back and buy more books, they spread the word. That's the main thing for marketing in this, because in the Amazon world of so many millions of books available, it's very hard. Marketing is probably the hardest thing that an author has to face.
Now, if people want to find a collection of all these Appalachian writers in one location, a good place to start is AppalachianAuthors.com.
Yes.
And that's the website for the guild itself.
Yes, we have a member page that links to their website where books can be purchased. We also have what we call our bookstore, where those that choose to do so have sent their books, and we've linked it to where they can be purchased, whether it be their website or whether it be Amazon or wherever someone can purchase those books.
Now, you don't have to have written a book to be a member. Is that
No.
Right? And you don't have to live in the area to be a member.
No. We have members from Florida, Georgia, both of the Carolinas, of course, Virginia and Tennessee, because it's right here, Kentucky, West Virginia. We now even have a new member out in Arizona.
Which is great.
It is.
So the guild is actually growing. So like I said, you don't have to be a member to written a book to be a member.
Right.
And the dues are generally $25, but if people get in a little early this year, it's $20.
Right.
So you can find that on the website. A couple of benefits that I've noticed, and I'll just toss out and run this by you guys here, of being a guild member is not just, I've made a lot of new friends since I joined the guild. And
with like interests.
Exactly.
I think that's important.
And I've met people that people that can help you grow as a writer. We've learned a lot about writing prompts with like Linda Hoagland, for example,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Getting to know other writers like Linda Dobkins, who writes under Joe Allison, she lives here, but she was from somewhere else. And the books that she writes are period pieces built in, set in St. Louis. And
yes.
So we have such a wide variety of writers that write in different genres and different styles. Mm-hmm. And what are some of the perks? I'll just ask you, Ellen, what are some of the perks that you felt from just being a member of the guild?
Well, one of the important ones for me is when we have the workshops. I want to grow my craft. I want to develop, additional skills, new skills. And by having our guest speakers come in who address certain topics that we've been polled the year before, asked, what would we like to hear, what we'd like to see. And then when we get those, I think that that's fantastic. It's well worth the 2 hours or so that we spend listening.
Yeah, $25 is really kind of a very small amount to pay
Right.
for
for the
get
whole
back.
year
The whole
and
year.
get all of those
Right.
opportunities. And like you just said too, I teach at King University, and I teach students about the value of networking. I mean, that's a business skill, and writing there's the business of writing. So the networking with each other
Yes.
and learning how each other is doing something and trying something new, and especially today with Carrie on Zoom. Learning how to use new technology to further our message.
Right.
And Jason, for you, I mean, you're, like I said, one of the newer members, but what have you gotten out of it so far?
One thing, first of all, I'm going to preface this by saying everybody wants their books and their work to be praised. But to get to that point, you got to find people to bounce those ideas off of, and you have to find people who will read your work and give you honest feedback. And this group has provided members who do that for me, and I think that's a great thing, because most people can't read their own writing and see the flaws.
No, they cannot.
And this group has a lot of like-minded individuals, and everyone here wants you to find success
Right.
with your work, because your success is the group's success.
Right.
Right.
And the short time I've been a member, I've learned that and made some good friends, and that's pretty much what the big thing that I've taken from all this.
Like you mentioned, you got to have, in a way, good, solid, honest feedback. And I'm looking at the standards that were held here and trying to self-edit, which is the worst, dumbest mistake ever.
That's like somebody trying to represent themselves in court.
Yeah, exactly. It's, but
For a lawyer.
it took me 20 years to actually get my first book right. I went back and it's like, after putting it on the shelf for a while and going back, it's like, wow, I don't even write that way anymore. So I ended up doing a rewrite of my very first book that I started writing in early 2000. And I just got it kind of back out in 2018.
Right.
And actually, I wrote about that experience because that's a tough experience. That's a tough pill to swallow. There's a lot of people, we artists sometimes have a little thin skin. I get that, and we don't want to hear criticism.
And we're wedded to the words that we write.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to divorce yourself from your content.
So, I had a reader, a guy I know who wrote, his name's Robert Prather. He actually wrote a book on the Swift Silver Mine. He went and did a huge, extensive research on this and where that potential treasure is hidden in eastern Kentucky. Fascinating guy. So he read one of my books. And he got back with me last week. He's like, hey, that was a really good story. By the way, you had a misspelling on this page and this page. And I thought, thank God. I'm glad because I can always upload a new document and correct that,
Right.
And I'm glad when people notice that, because if somebody just says, yeah, good work, it means they kind of don't care. Tell me what's wrong or how do I make a story better? And that's what this group
He probably
really
gets
does.
mad at me because when I read something, I will always send it back.
Oh, no.
Says, here's all the corrections. Do you want to make them or do you want me to?
That's what I want. It's like, I'm sitting anywhere I send it out. It's like, just tell me what I did wrong. That's
when I first became a reporter in Louisville for the Southwest Virginia Enterprise, I really didn't have the background, but thank the Lord they hired me anyway. But they never edited my work. It would end up appearing, even though we had an editor, it would end up appearing in the paper as I wrote it. Well, what I found out is the publisher of the paper would red ink everything. He read the paper. And I have to admit, when the editor left, I went in there, got the paper when he left for lunch, and I'd crouch down in his office behind a chair to see where all those mistakes were, because how was I going to learn what I did wrong?
Right.
I want to know what's wrong. I want to fix it. So I've always guided my reporters, or now my student writers, that when you see red, don't see red like a red cape in front of a bull. Just know that red is the heart of someone who cares that you're better at your craft tomorrow than you are today.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody out there that's thinking of writing a book, and definitely touch base with the Guild and reach out and learn some things. It's a fun group, and especially when we meet at other times, we've had more people present. It's always a good time. Now, Ellen, if people want to find you and follow along you to see when your book comes out, how do they find you?
Through the Appalachian Authors Guild website, AppalachianAuthors.com.
And Jason, what about you if people want to follow along with you?
Right now, my personal website is jasonchoughton.com, and not yet on the Appalachian website. I'm looking forward to adding my information on there.
Okay. And then they can find you on social media.
Yeah, on social media. Right now, I'm just on Twitter at WriterJCH.
Okay.
And on Facebook at Jason Houghton Author. Sorry.
Okay. And Emily's got a page set up for I Have You Covered.
Yes, Emily has
there.
I Have You Covered.
And she does book covers for anybody who wants to check out her work, and it's incredibly reasonably priced, and she does good stuff. Vicki, if somebody wants to check out Hoot Books Publishing, where do they go?
Hootbookspublishing.biz.
All right, and you're right here in Abingdon. I guess you got your contact info on there, and let's pile on more business for you and keep you busy. I know you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've been slam busy, but that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
No, it is not, and I've been so blessed because one of the first things someone asked me was, "How are you going to promote your business so that you have business?" And I said, "Well, as soon as I finish the ones that I'm working on, I'll think about that and go forward." I haven't had to, because luckily word of mouth from other authors at events or whatever, or speaking to someone comes up and said, "Oh, I have a book. Where did you get yours published?" And through that word of mouth, I've ended up with many clients, so I feel very blessed.
Good. And also on the AppalachianAuthors.com, there's a link there. I guess people can go to our GoFundMe page or make a donation there online too.
Yes.
Because there are several events that are coming up that we'll need some additional funding for.
Right.
And the more funding we get, the more people we can have in, and spread the message of what we're working on, and grow the number of writers in the region and teach the craft. And It's exciting stuff. We certainly appreciate everybody listening in to this episode of Appalachian Shine. We have a pretty interesting conversation coming up on the next podcast. You folks here might find that interesting too. I'm going to be meeting with a group of preachers from here in Central Appalachia over in Bristol, from different churches, to talk about how tough it's been to keep their congregations together during COVID.
Right.
And there's so many personal interest stories, I think, that are not just with writers, but with anything and everything here in Appalachia that represents our culture, whether it's the arts, which I think, writers define who we are as a culture. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important to support every one of them. And again, how churches are a central part of our life here in Appalachia as well. So we'll be talking to some pastors in the next one. And we'll be definitely getting together with more members of the Authors Guild as the weeks and months go on. So thanks everybody for tuning in. You can also check us out on supportappalachia.org and make a donation there as well. So thanks again, and we will see you on down the road.